Hello everybody, welcome to the training video for the Conservice payment processing software. My name is Shauna Karen. I'm the trainer at Conservice, and I will share with you today some instructions on using the software and how to also go into our website and view the payments that residents have made through the system. So to get started, you each should already all have the software and drivers installed in your computer. And to open the software and scan payments, you'll just double click on the icon on your desktop. Okay, once the software opens, you'll be at the login window, and from here you'll simply enter your Conservice username and password. It's the same username and password that you'll use to log into our website. So if you already have that login information, that's what you'll use for this software as well. Simply click Login, and then you will see the main area of the scanner interface. Okay, I want to point out a few things. Up here in the upper left-hand corner, you should see the property name for the property at which you work at. If you don't, you'll need to contact your Conservice account representative right away so we can get that fixed for you. Also, there's some icons over here on the upper right-hand corner of the screen. The first one is the settings icon. Looks like some gears. If you click on that icon, you'll be in a place where you can check for software updates. These areas at the bottom of the screen you shouldn't need to work with very often, only if you're working with our programmers to debug an issue. So again, you got to that by clicking this icon right here. Sometimes when you log into the software, you'll see this icon and it will have a little red exclamation point next to it. That simply indicates that you're on an older version of the software and you will need to update that software before you can move on. So again, to do that, click on the icon, click check for updates. If there are updates available, you'll be directed on how to download and install those updates before you can process a batch. Okay, the other icons on the main page are training-based icons or help resources. If you click on this question mark icon, you'll see a help document with all the information you need to have your questions answered about using the software. So if you have questions after the training, you can just simply open up that document and read through those help topics. The third icon, this media player icon, allows you to download a shorter tutorial for processing this checks through the system. If you click yes at this point, a browser will launch on your computer and that video will download. It'll take a minute or two for that to happen before you can watch it. I think it's about 8 minutes long, but it's a nice condensed version of what we're going to go through today. Okay, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started processing our first batch of payments. To do that, I'm simply going to click the Enter Payments button here. So here you see the screen where you first enter the payments that you're going to process in the software. So the first batch we're going to do today just has 3 checks from residents, and I'm going to show you beginning to end how to process that batch. So the first step is to simply type the amount of the first payment in this box right here. Once you've done that, hit the Enter key on your keyboard to bring up another line to enter the next amount. And then hitting Enter after that will bring up a line to enter the third amount. Then click Enter once again. At this point, we just need to activate the scanner and tell it we're ready to start scanning. To do that, we'll click the Scan Payments button here on the bottom right corner of the screen. And then you'll load the payments into the scanner and they will scan through the system. Once they've all successfully gone through the scanner, you'll click the Stop Scanning button. At this point, you need to re-enter the amounts of the payments. A couple things I'll point out. The checks I'm processing today are all made out to Conservice. Your residents will continue to make their payments out to your property name, so there's no change there. This point in the process is also a good time to compare the 2 amounts that are written on the payment to make sure that they match. If they are not the same, you'll need to use this amount that's written on the longer line here. That is the legal amount. So I'm going to simply type the amount of this payment in this box. I can then either hit this next button or hit enter on my keyboard to bring up the next image. Once I've entered the amount of that last payment, the system will ask me if I'm ready to move on to the next step, and I'll just click yes to continue. At this point we can see our 3 payments listed here, and everything has a nice blue background, which is good. A little bit later we'll see some situations where there are some issues we need to resolve, and in those cases you'll see a pink background. So as long as everything's blue, that indicates things are going well. The only other selection you'll need to consider at this step is whether the check or the money order is coming from a resident or coming from a housing authority or a rent assistance program. If that's the case, then you'll choose H-vouch here instead of resident. For this first batch, we're going to go ahead and assume all these payments are from residents, so we'll keep resident selected there. Then I'll simply click continue to move on to the next step of the process. Okay, we'll now apply these payments to specific residents and units or vendors. To begin, simply click in the search box and begin typing the name of the resident. All of the possible matches will display as you type, and when you see the right one, simply click on it from the drop-down list to populate that resident. Over time, the system will begin to remember who's made payments, and based on their account number, those residents will be populated automatically when you get to this point. So after you've scanned payments for a few months, it's entirely possible that when you come to this screen, all of the lines will already be blue and those residents will already be selected for you. If you need to, however, you can override those selections at any time. If the payment is from a vendor, we can handle that as well. In the search box, you'll simply scroll down to the end to see the different temp categories. You can also choose temp from this list, and then just those categories will be listed there. So choose the category that best represents the payment you're processing, and keep in mind there's an other miscellaneous income category, and in many cases that may be the best option for you. So then just choose it and you're ready to go. Once you're ready, go ahead and click continue to move on to the next step. To finish up the batch, we'll go ahead and click import batch. At this time, the system is sending the data from the scanned payments to Conservice for processing. And depending on the size of the batch and your internet connection speed, this could take a minute or two to happen. So just sit tight and wait for it to finish. Once that happens, you'll see this results window here that tells you that in this case 3 payments were successfully uploaded and the corresponding 3 images were also uploaded. So that is exactly what we want to see at this point in the process. I'm going to click OK, and now we can see the batch number listed here, and we can also see the time at which these payments will be pushed into your one-site system. That happens on a 15-minute cycle. So from where I am right now, 4 o'clock is about 11 minutes from now, and so at that point these payments will begin to show up in your one-site system. And that's it, folks. That's the process from scanning payments from beginning to end. So I'm going to go ahead and click finish, and we'll find ourselves back at this main window of the software. So I'd like to start another batch now with a few more payments to show you a couple of situations that you might encounter as you're scanning payments into the system. So to get started, we'll just click this Enter Payments button. This is the screen where you'll enter the amounts of the payments. So I'm going to type the amount of the first payment and hit Enter, and then type the amount of the second payment and hit Enter. Just going to start with these 2. I'm going to now click the Scan Payments button on the bottom right corner and load the checks into the scanner and get those scanned. Once they've gone through the scanner, I'll hit the Stop Scanning button and verify the amounts of the payments here. Okay, so here we're at this step where we see our payments listed. Now you'll notice that this time payment number 2 has a pink background, which means that there's an issue or something that needs to be resolved before we can move on. Anytime that happens, you can look over here on the right-hand side and you'll see an explanation for the situation. So in this case, we can see that the amounts that were entered the first step and the second step don't match. So the system doesn't know which is the correct amount to use. So I'm going to go ahead and click this eye icon right here, and that'll bring up the payment image. This is really helpful to pull up and look at so you can review what the actual amount is. So once again, I'm looking at both of these amounts here, and I can now see that the amount I entered the second time was the incorrect amount. So I'm going to just fix that, close this payment image, and then we've got that nice blue background and we're ready to move on. I'm going to assume that these payments are also from residents, so I'm going to keep residents selected at this stage. Okay, so let's say that you're in the middle of processing some payments and a resident walks in your door and they have a payment for you, and you think, well, I'm processing payments now, I may as well put this one in the same batch. It's easy to add payments at this step. You'll just click this Add Payments button here. That'll take you back to the first step where you will enter the amount of the payment with your keyboard, hit enter, and then scan payments to run it through your scanner. Click the Stop Scanning button and then verify the amount of the payment. And you'll see now that we're back to this next step and with that third payment added there. Now, if you noticed, the payment that I just processed is a money order. So let's take a look at that. With a money order, the system is going to pull the check number or the identification number for this payment from this bottom line of numbers that's you find on the image of the payment that was scanned. When we're dealing with money orders, that number is not always, and it often is not actually, a unique identifying number. So for example, MoneyGram will use 90 for all of their money orders. And so that means as these payments are entered into your OneSite system, if we leave it like that, then all of the checks in OneSite will have a check number of 90, which isn't very helpful for us. So anytime that you're dealing with a money order, you're going to need to change this check number from the number that was scanned to the identifying number that's on the face of the money order itself. In this case, it's over here on the left-hand side, running up and down. Sometimes it'll be in this upper right-hand corner or someplace else on that payment. But to change it, you just simply click into this field and type the numbers that you see lining that are on the actual face of the money order. And once we've done that, we're ready to move on to the next step. Okay, at this step, we'll go ahead and assign those payments out to units. I also want to point out that it is possible to assign a payment to an applicant. Now, in order for that to happen correctly, you need to understand a little bit about how we're pulling the resident data from your OneSite system. 2 times a day, we actually go into your OneSite system and essentially take a snapshot of all of your resident data in your OneSite system, and we'll load that into the scanner system so that when you scan payments, you can assign payments to those residents. So let's think about a specific situation. Let's say that an applicant comes in your office at 10 o'clock in the morning, and you process that applicant, you take a payment from them for their deposit. The next thing you're going to do is go into your OneSite system and add that applicant to your OneSite system and associate that applicant with a specific unit. If that applicant isn't assigned to a specific unit, you will not be able to scan any payments to that applicant. If you immediately try to use the CPS system to scan that payment to the applicant, when you get to this point, because we haven't updated our snapshot of your data after you enter that applicant into the system, into your OneSite system, you will not see that applicant name in the list here. So what you need to keep in mind is that if you enter or make changes to the resident data in your OneSite system in the morning, You're going to need to wait until the afternoon before you can scan any payments to applicants or residents that you may have changed in your one-site system. If you make changes in one site in the afternoon, you're going to need to wait till the following morning to scan payments to those residents. So we're taking those snapshot views overnight as well as about in the middle of the day. And so as long as you wait for those snapshots to update, then you should be fine to scan a payment to an applicant. All right, once I've got these all applied, I'll go ahead and click Continue to move on to the last step, which is to import the batch. Here we see that we have the results that we're looking for. The 3 payments were successfully uploaded and their images were uploaded. So I'm going to click OK. Now at this point, if you wanted to go out and see that information in our website, you could do that. That information will be available immediately. Also at this time, the system will email you with a summary of the contents of the batch that you scanned. Now the email you get will look something like this. It'll be from Conservice Payment Scanner, checkscan@conservice.com, and then you'll see a listing of all the payments that were in the batch that you just submitted, as well as the unit number, the amount of the payment, and the check number. Now this we're looking at right in here does not correspond with the batch we just scanned. This is just a sample of a previous email that was sent. But you'll know that the payments have reached Conservice when you receive this email back from us. And so you should get an email like this every time you scan. If you don't receive that email, then that might mean that we don't have your correct email address in the system. So if that's the case, you need to contact your Conservice account representative right away, and we'll go ahead and set you up so that you receive those emails going forward. Okay, I'm going to click Finish, which brings us back to the main window of the software again. And I'm going to do one more batch with you today. So to do that, I'm going to click Enter Payments, type the amount of the payment, first payment here, and so on until I get them all entered. Once I've got all those payments entered, I'm going to click the Scan Payments button to initiate the scanner, load those payments in the scanner, and get them all scanned. Once they've all gone through the scanner, you'll go ahead and click the Stop Scanning button, and then verify the amounts that you see on the images here. And move on to the next step. Okay, so we can see that payment number 2 has a little bit of an issue. This time we can tell it has an issue because it has a pink background. And this time we can see it's because the account number has errors. So if you look here in the check number field, you can see that there was actually no number was picked up. And if you click this plus sign, you can see that we don't have a number for a routing number or an account number either. So for whatever reason, the scanner wasn't able to read that information from the payment. So let's go ahead and take a look at that image to see what's going on. I'm going to click on this eye icon right here. And here we can see the payment image. Now normally the scanner reads this ink at the bottom of the check with these funny looking numbers, and it picks up that information and populates these fields. But for whatever reason on this particular payment, the scanner wasn't able to read that data. It's not a problem. It doesn't mean we can't scan this check. It just means that we're going to need to manually enter this information. So to do that, you're always going to pull the check number from the upper right-hand corner of the payment. The routing number is going to always be the first 9 digits on the bottom left corner. So the numbers between these funny looking symbols right here. So I'm just going to click in this field and type the numbers that I see here. The account number is going to be the second set of numbers, or the numbers between these next symbols here. So I'll go ahead and click in this field and type the numbers I see there. Once I've done that, you can see that this background turns blue, and we're ready to move on. Now we're going to assume that this fourth payment that I processed is from a housing authority or rent assistance program. So I'm going to go ahead and choose H vouch for this before I move on to the next step. Okay, so we can see that the system has remembered that this particular payment should be applied to this particular resident. So that's great. That's just one fewer that we have to manually select. But for these others, I'm going to go ahead and make these selections. And remember, this last one is the one where we want to apply the amounts from this check out to multiple residents. So to do that, I'm going to click this plus sign. It'll bring up a separate row for us down here, and I'll enter the amount that's going to be applied to the first resident, and then I'll choose that resident from the list. Let's find one that's not an applicant here, and then I'll click the plus sign to bring up another row, and here I can enter an amount to be applied to an additional resident. And I'll just continue doing this until I apply all of the funds from that check to a unit and a resident at the property. Let's do one more here. Grab another unit. There we go. So now this $284.77 has been divided up in these amounts to these units and these residents. And once that happens correctly, the background turns blue and we're ready to move on. So there are a couple of situations where you will not be able to use the system to scan a housing authority check. The first is if there's money on the check that needs to be applied to a resident who's moved out, you will not be able to process that and scan it through the system. Instead, you'll need to take that check to the bank and process it manually. And the reason for that is we just don't have the ability to choose a past resident over here on the list. So once you move a resident out of one site, then you will not be able to choose that resident and apply a scanned payment to that resident. The other situation where you won't be able to use the system to scan a housing authority check is if the housing authority is taking money back from any residents. In that case, you'll also need to take that payment to the bank to be deposited manually. And the reason is you won't be able to enter any negative amounts over here. So we can't apply a negative amount to a resident. So as long as a housing authority check, all the money on the check is going to residents who currently live at the community, you should be able to scan that through our system successfully. Okay, so we'll go ahead and click continue to move on to the next step and go ahead and import that batch. So here we can see the results we want to see, that those 4 payments were successfully uploaded and the 4 images were also uploaded. So we'll go ahead and click OK and finish to close out that batch. So that's all we're going to look at today as far as the scanning is concerned. I'm going to take a minute or two now and show you our website and how you can use the website to find payments that have been scanned, as well as the images of those payments. So it's an easy thing to hop over to our website. You'll simply open up an internet browser and go to www.conservice.com. From here, you'll click the login button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen and then enter your username and password. And remember, this is the same username and password you used to log into the scanning system. So here you find yourself on our website. To view payment information, you'll go to the Resident Tools tab. Okay, so once you click on the Resident Tools tab, you'll find yourself on the Find Resident Payments screen. Now it's an easy thing just to click Search, and you'll see a listing of all the payments that have been processed for this particular community. So in this case, we can see that we're looking at the first 10 of 24 payments that have been processed. Now I can use these arrows to page through all the results, but as you can imagine, if there's very many payments, that's not a very efficient way to find the payment that you're looking for. And so you may want to use some of these fields up here on the top to narrow down your search range a little bit. An easy way to do it is to do it by date. So maybe you want to come in here and choose a date range for payments. Let's go ahead and just pick these dates here and click Search. And now you can see, okay, we've narrowed it down from 24 to 21. which again isn't super helpful. So another thing that we can do is come over here to the resident name. In this box, if you just start typing a resident's name, you'll see all the possible matches as you type, and as you continue typing, the system will get a little bit closer to the resident you're looking for. So go ahead and choose the resident and click search. And now you see I've narrowed my search down to the 2 payments that were made by this resident during this date range. Now if I wanted to see if there were other payments this resident had made out of this date range, I could pull the dates off and see that these are all of the payments that this resident has ever made to us. For now, I'm going to go ahead and pull this off, research here, and show you a little bit about the information that we can see down here. Now what we're looking at with the results, we see the unit number, the resident name, the amount of the payment, the date it was submitted, its status, and when it was processed by Conservice. You'll also be able to see a transaction number as well as a payment source. Now for any checks or money orders that were scanned through the system, it's going to show as check over here. You notice in this case we see an EFT payment as well as a CC payment. Those were payments that this resident has made from the Resident Tools portal. So this first payment here is a credit card payment, and it was a one-time payment. This last one down here was an EFT payment made by the resident, also a one-time payment. And you'll see that this last one is pending, meaning it hasn't finished processing yet. So you'll always be able to see those payment types here. Now for the items that were scanned or that have check in the payment source, you'll notice that the transaction number is bold. That indicates that if you click on that, you'll be able to bring up and see the scanned image. So at the current time, we are not able to pass these images through to your OneSite system. We're working with RealPage to fix that so that we can send those images into OneSite. But for now, if you ever need to come and see the image of a payment that was scanned, you'll need to come to our website, log in, go to the Resident Tools portal, and find that payment. And then once again, to open that image, just click on that bold number there, and you'll see the scanned image come up. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the timing of all of these things that are occurring. When you use our software to scan payments to Conservice, remember you're going to get that email from us as soon as that information hits the Conservice site or the Conservice system. So when you get that email, you could come out to this website right then, and you'd be able to search and find the information that you're looking for. It may take a few minutes for all of those payments to finish processing, but you'll be able to see them here. We will batch all of that payment information and send it over to OneSite on a 15-minute cycle. So within 15 minutes of the time you scan that payment, you'll be able to go into OneSite and see that transaction information in OneSite. So let me show you what that's going to look like for you. When you're ready to do that, go ahead and log into OneSite. Click on the administration link over here on the upper right hand corner. From there you will click RealPage Exchange and then View Imported Transactions. At that point you'll build a list, and then you'll be able to see all of those payments that have just been sent over to the system. Now in this case we can see that those first 3 payments have finished processing, and RealPage is still working on this last payment. So we send the information to OneSite on a 15-minute cycle, and then OneSite is also on a 15-minute cycle for processing payment information and posting it to the resident ledger. So in this case, those top 3 payments have been completed, which means if you went to the resident ledger in OneSite, you would see the payment information there. On that last one, you're going to need to wait until it's in the completed status before you can see it in the resident ledger. Now keep in mind that the payment images will not be on the resident ledger. To see those images, you'll need to go to our website and pull those images that way. So that's all of the information I have for you today about the scanner and using the Conservice website to see payment images. If you haven't done so already, you're going to want to review the document that Capstone has put together called Conservice Scanning and OneSite, which will talk to you and explain about the payment codes and all of the accounting factors that deal with the scanning system. But the one thing from this document that I will point out to you now is down here at the end of the document, you'll see an email address. If you have any questions about scanning, whether it's on the Conservice side or the Capstone side, you will need to email checkscansupport@capstonemanagement.com for any scanning issues. They will watch those emails and respond. If it's something that needs to come to Conservice, they will let us know about those issues. So to make it easy for you, we've tried to just make it so you just have one place to go for all of your questions, and that is this email address here. Another thing I'll point out is that down here at the bottom, last page of the document, there are a few kind of commonly found situations, so you may want to review those and read what to do when those situations occur. So thanks for your time today, folks. I hope this has been helpful. Keep in mind you can review at any time as you need. Thanks so much and have a great day.